Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our program tonight. And we are back in session.
Hello, welcome to another Mom's Night In. My name is Tanya May Avent. I'm your host for the evening. And tonight I'm joined by my lovely producer, Markeisha Green.
Hello.
Hello. And our guest coordinator, Shira Berticia. Hello, Shira. Hello, Markeisha.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
How are you ladies doing? We see folks that are jumping in the chat. Good evening, Carmen May. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, Nicole Brown. I just saw Nicole's on a nice family cruise, so welcome back, Nicole. Hope you had a wonderful
nice.
time. Hi, Rose. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad to have you. And I see Darlene Henderson, another longtime friend, and I know she loved our topic, I would say, for tonight. My brother, very good friend of my brother, so welcome. And I see my college roommate and line sister and girlfriend and all things. Tammy is joining us tonight. Welcome, Tammy. Thank you so much for supporting. And I know tonight's interesting. It's my sister's story, but it's my story too. And I feel, I understand, like, a lot of times when our guests come on and they say they're so nervous, and I'm like, it'll be okay. But I don't know, tonight I'm feeling it's not normal like I usually do, preparing to host the show. So
yeah, I was going to wonder. I'm like, isn't this like interviewing yourself?
It is. It is. And I'm feeling that, so I'm not as, again, comfortable usually talking to our guests, but tonight it's a little different. So y'all keep us in prayer. Thank you so much for being here. Keep us in prayer as we share a story. I see my other sister Terry is on as well. Welcome,
It's
Terry.
It's going to be amazing.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yes,
God
it
is going to
is.
get the glory. So Mother Elaine is on. Good night, or good evening, I should say. Good evening to all those that are joining us. So if you're a first time with us this month, we are talking about moms who have lost a brother. And I'll give background. Initially, we were talking about moms that have lost a sibling, but when we came with all of our guests, they were all brothers. So we changed it to brothers. So we will have another series, I'm sure, probably next season with sisters, because I'm sure it's a very different relationship and very different experiences losing your sister, as moms, or as females losing a sister versus a brother as well. So I'm interested to even kind of to delve into that kind of those relationships as well. But I see Ian on as well, another previous guest of ours. So welcome.
Yes.
Love when you come on and support us. We appreciate you always supporting Faith-Filled Moms, and those that are always supporting, whether you're chiming in on. We know we have some each week that don't chime in, but thank you. We know you're there, and we thank you so much for joining us and for your support. So if you do know someone who is dealing with grief and maybe struggling and just needing it and needed some comfort, please share tonight, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Share the link, share this story. It's going to be a powerful story. If you've been with us, we talked about this topic from a mother's point of view. My mother actually joined us 2 years ago for loss of a child. And so she shared that. So some people may have heard the story before, but again, now we're hearing this story from a different relationship. And that may be something we talk about tonight, the different grievings based on feelings of grief based on relationship, because of grieving from a mom's point of view, the same person, but there's a mom, there's a dad, there's siblings, there's aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. There's so many different relationships and
so many different dynamics.
Yeah. So there are some dynamics, truths that hold true regardless of the relationship concerning grief, but then there are still some differences as well. So we're just going to explore them and get into the conversation. So I am not going to hold us up any longer. I'm going to say goodbye to Markeisha, goodbye to Shira.
Right.
And we will bring out our guest for tonight. So Markeisha, if you bring out our guest Tina, and we will get started.
All
I
right.
see Shana on as well, one of our previous guests. Shana,
yes, I was getting ready to say that. All right.
Welcome.
Here
Bye,
we
ladies.
go.
Bye.
All right, I see Tina. So this is not your first time here, so welcome. You have been here before. So Tina
Yes.
was also on our cancer series during our first season, and just shared her powerful story of just her fight with cancer and overcoming. So we welcome you back. We're so grateful to have you back with us. So thank you. How you feeling tonight?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how it
Well,
goes.
you are a favorite. You are, I don't want to say a fan favorite, but I know that so many people
Uh,
just enjoyed your insight and your thoughts last time you were here. So I am so very glad to have you back with us. And as I was sharing with the ladies, we've talked, and I know when we were we always do our preparation with our guests, and I know we didn't get through, I don't think,
right,
5 minutes before we started dabbing our eyes. So
right.
hopefully tonight will be a bit stronger to get to that.
Because we're saying, I'm like, uh,
Just keep breathing. Just keep. I'm
yeah,
water here. We're just gonna keep
yeah,
breathing, keep breathing.
yeah.
But I'm gonna open us up in prayer, and then I will. I'm all out of sorts. Let me do this first. I'll introduce you. So everyone, this is my sister, Tina May. So Tina, would you just first of all greet our guests? Just say hello. Let them know a little bit about yourself as we share of you and my brother and our brother.
Good evening, everyone. If you haven't seen me before, I'm Tina. I'm Tanya's youngest, one of the twins, the babies of the family. I am a PE teacher. I have two daughters, a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old. What else do you want to know about me?
So Markeisha put up the pictures, and I thought something, Tina. We didn't put pictures of your children up there. There's a
I
picture of
know.
all of us, but yeah, we thought about that. I didn't think about that. Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
why.
I was wondering. I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to incorporate my kids in this because they
Yeah.
have pictures with him without me. But it's
Exactly.
yeah, but yeah,
That's okay. It's all good. So these are, of course, our family, a family of five. My brother was our brother was the oldest, and four girls. So that is our family portrait there. But yeah. So let's get into it. Again, it's going to be, I think, for me different. Of course, knowing the story, but hearing your version along the same path, the same experience, the same loss, but just from a different point of view. So I see some family joining us. So Jasmine, our niece, is on. And she says, our nephew Jojo says hi, Tina. And our cousin Cindy from Arizona is on. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us as well. It's so good to have you on. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pray for strength to get through this, and then we're going to get started. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you again for the honor and privilege to just come together, Lord. Everyone that's on, whether they're watching live or even those that may be watching our rebroadcast, God, we just pray that you would bless this time together, God. We pray that you would allow Tina and I to just, in this conversation, to be able to say what we've experienced, what we've learned about you, God, how we're going through our process, that hopefully someone else needs to hear, that would, we hope and we pray, that would help and touch someone else through their grieving process, God. So we just pray that you be in the conversation, be with all of our technology, be with everything that is needed to allow this message to go out into the world, God. We just thank you in advance for your will being done, and you're getting the glory tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so I'm going to ask you as we get into this and just talk about Tyrone, or our brother. Just talk about, if you could just, those that may not know, introduce who he was, our relationship, and kind of what he meant to you personally.
Okay. And I was thinking about this, like everybody doesn't have the same relationship with Tyrone that the next person may have. Like
especially sisters, right? Because it's four
right,
of us.
exactly. Right, exactly. Right. So even outside of the family, like people may like, oh, he's mean and he's this and that, but like, and other people say, no, he's great. So it's like it depends on the relationship he had with you. But my brother was to me, I know, like I said, sometimes he could be a jerk, but to me, he was still the greatest big brother for me. Like he was the oldest, I was the youngest, well, one of the babies, of course. And like growing up, everybody always used to think that we were the twins. Although I have a twin sister, they thought me and Tyrone were twins, and I never saw it. But they said, people would see me, like I'd be somewhere out, and someone said, "You're Tyrone's sister." Never met this person a day in my life, but just by looking at my face, they could tell that I was his sister. But I mean, he was a jokester. He was the life of the party.
Yeah.
Like that was like my road dog, like he was my date. Like anytime we had a wedding or a family event or something to go to, we're driving together, we're with each other the whole time. His kids, I've had a relationship, a personal relationship with each one of them, like in each point of their life specifically. I've been close to each of them like they were my own kids. He's the godfather of my youngest daughter. And although you could have something bad to say, I just right now I don't like. He was just a great big brother. I looked up to him.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. Even after he passed, we would meet so many people, or they'd reach out and just say, like, your brother texted me every day, or he encouraged me. And like just another side that
you would never think that he would do something like that.
Really, our brother?
Right, exactly.
But again, you have to know Tyrone. Tyrone was a very, very unique personality. Like you said, a jokester. He was very just dynamic, just a very dynamic person. Different. But I remember Markeisha, our producer that was just on, she talked about her brother, and even with that, it was a very difficult relationship with her and her brother. But even kind of thinking back to, she would mention about her childhood and those memories. And I just want to talk to you. I know we have such great memories as children, but as I'm thinking, I remember we used to, the way our rooms are, we have a long hallway and my parents' room is in the front. And me and him, our rooms were across from each other. We used to be out sneaking, watching the TV. My head would pick it out this way. His head would be picking out this way. And we watching the TV while mom and dad are watching because the TV is right there. But it's like, especially when someone passes, it's like those memories that make you smile.
Right.
Those are so important to really, no matter what there may have been negative in the situations or relationships, there's always good that you can find. There's always things that you can smile about to bring joy. And I think, one thing you talked about even in your blog was the wrestling matches. That was something I think for all five of us that was our thing. We would clear out our parents' furniture in the living room and we would have wrestling matches. My brother was such an instigator. And so if you remember like WWE or WWF back then, so me and Tyrone would be managers, and the twins, Tina and Tony, would be wrestlers. I don't know, was Terry like a ref or official or something?
I was trying to think, where did Terry fit in any of this? I don't remember.
What were you doing? I don't know if you were officiating.
I don't remember.
They would be wrestling, sometimes boxing, and they would come to the corner, and we'd be talking to you and trying to get you hype up. But that was just those things that just, when you think about your childhood, those are such great memories.
And I was upset with him because he never wanted to be my manager. He always wanted Tony.
Because Tony was bigger, right? Because Tony was bigger. So but
I took major offense. I took major offense to that.
But we got through it. Yeah. Good evening, Shannon. I see Shannon Davis on. Thank you so much for joining. But again, we could go on and on and on. Our brother was, when I talk about, he was an amazing, amazing athlete. That's one of the things. I just wrote a story for Guidepost magazine about him, and that was one of the things I remembered. I remember we were at our grandparents' house outside. And I remember a dog was chasing him. And he was so fast. He was short, but he was so fast. I remember he ran, and there was a window that was open in the car, and he ran in the car feet first and landed literally in the driver's seat. Back then, it was like a stick shift. It wasn't even the cars that we have today. He maneuvered his body in such a way, he got away from the dog and landed inside the car. And I just remember, like, wow, this guy.
How do you do that?
I always say that he was an amazing, amazing athlete. I know, again, he was on the shorter side. He used to wrestle, and we'd spend, as children, all weekend. We'd go to wrestling matches and be there all weekend to see this guy wrestle. And usually got to the end, Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost. When he lost, it wasn't good.
It was, that was a bad night for everybody.
Daddy was not happy. That was not happy. So we all rooted for him because we wanted him to win so bad, because we did not want Daddy to be fussing at him.
Exactly.
But he just, again, was a great athlete. Just you think about it, so many funny stories. Even as I'm thinking, I remember we were in high school and we had report cards come out. He didn't do good report cards. And I was a good student in high school. So I'm like, okay. He's like, let's not tell. It was before maybe a holiday or maybe spring break or something in the car when the report cards came out. And we made an agreement. He said, please don't tell mom and dad about the report cards. Let's hold off until. Okay, I'm in for you. I won't say anything.
I'm game.
The school called my parents, I guess, about his credit card. I'm like, I keep saying credit card, his report card. And yes, we got in trouble because of that. But I was down. You know what I mean? I was down to support him. Did not try to keep him out of trouble.
We would go with all of his shenanigans, right? All of his shenanigans. Whatever he said. Okay, Ty.
We had to feel for him as the only boy. We had to just try to keep him out of trouble. So
right, exactly, yeah.
So I want to fast forward, and even throughout that, as we started having our kids, he still was always there supporting. Again, as a great athlete, but he did have his comments about our children's athletic abilities. If our children could not do anything, he would tease, and he would,
He didn't hold back. He let it know.
But he
Right,
always
he did.
supported. He
He was
always
there.
showed up. He always supported no matter what. He would laugh at you. He'd make jokes at your expense. But he was
Yep.
he was there,
He
right?
was there, right? But he was there. Yep.
He was there.
Exactly.
So it's again those memories and those things that you think about. But I want to share about once you start. We'll get into kind of his passing,
Okay.
and so those that don't know, Tyrone passed from COVID very early in the pandemic. So I want to ask you, Tina. Because we again same situation but different experiences. So we're all at this point. We're all away in our homes. We're all having to say distance and be safely in our home. And so talk about your experiences leading up to and through Tyrone's illnesses. What did you experience, and what were your thoughts and prayers during that time as he was ill?
When I first found out that he had COVID. So when we first got the text from my mom that he had COVID, immediately it was just like, oh my goodness, like, because when you hear about COVID and you hear about all these people passing away, and it's like all you hear is just death from it. It was like you didn't hear too many people surviving from it. So of course my first thoughts are, oh my goodness, my brother's gonna die. Like, I mean, that was my initial. That was my first initial thought, and I was just like, oh my goodness. I remember I texted him as soon as I found out, and I, told him I love him. He's going to get through this, even though, at that point, like I said, I was scared, but I did, have faith that he could get through it. And I said that. He texted me back, and I wrote my blog. Like, to this day, I don't even remember what he said back to me because I just can't go back. It's just too emotional for to do that. But I mean, even when he went under, I would continuously to text him, although he didn't ever respond because he was under, but I just still would send him messages and just talk like, he could respond back to me. But I mean, it was a scary, scary, scary time period. I kicked myself because I think a week before he went to the hospital, he's complaining he had some back problems, and felt like he had to go to the emergency room. And I think Kenny took him to the emergency room.
Yeah.
And he came back, whatever, and I had to drop something off at his house. And anytime I drive past my brother's house, I'm going in and we're going to sit and talk and bust it up for like at least an hour, just sit and talk. But for some reason that day, I just, I sent my daughter in. I said, just, take that in to Uncle Ty and come right back out. He texted me, of course, he was pissed off. He was like, why you ain't come in? You ain't come see about me. I could be dying, all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, just made up a story that I had to rush now to get somewhere else. But like, I wish that I would have gone in at least, because that would have been my last time seeing him,
Yeah.
But I just didn't. So, that's something I always regret, that I never went back in and checked up on him.
Yeah, I have that same thing. I remember sending Kenny, he texted and needed someone to take him, and I was working. And I remember sending him, could you go take him? And same thing, if it had been me taking him to the ER instead, that would have been my chance. I felt like I kind of missed out on my last chance to be able to see him as well. But as you were talking, I went to my phone. Interestingly enough, I still had the text, and I did the same thing. I texted him when he went in, and we had back and forth text, and then I kept texting because I kept saying when he wakes up, I want him to see
exactly
all of the texts. I just kept texting him throughout. But the thing that I guess it's a regret, I don't know that I could have anything to do or how I could have changed it, but I have so many texts that are gone from him because my, your phone's set up to save space and they auto delete. I never knew that was set up on my phone. So I know I was trying to scroll. You want to try to scroll and kind of remember certain conversations. I can't even go back. I can't even go back past 2020. And there have been so many. I can remember one time he sent me a joke about, a riddle or something, just all those banters back and forth. And I think those kind of things still are very helpful during the grieving process. Because again, they're memories, they bring a smile to your face, and those kind of things are missing. So I know that's something that's heavy on my heart. Like I wish I had a memory of all of the, if you think about all the texting and all the banter that we had, all of that's gone. So
right before he went in, he sent me a text, the stuff with the parents helping the kids out, with, school being online. He sent me one about Tara because I've been joking him. I was like, yo, I can't do this. So he would send me stuff all the time laughing at me. Like, I was like, bro, come on, man. So I still have stuff like that with him.
Yeah. So, but like you said, so we're home and we get a text. We get a text that he's gone. So we're all texting him. And that's a Sunday that he goes into the hospital. That by that Tuesday, I think he was sedated, and again, that was all of pretty much our last day of communicating with him. So in my case, same thing. It's like you automatically think that death back then, because just the news was just reporting of deaths, bodies piling up, and just it was just nothing but negative. And so I know I was trying to fight that, like, no, he's going to live. I know that what the Bible says about faith, if we have enough faith that, God would answer our prayer. If 2, 3 come to agreement, he's in the midst and he'll do. So I'm like, with our family, with our strong faith, filled and praying family, he's going to be fine. He's going to be okay. And going through, it was about 2 weeks of getting texts from mom. Sometimes good news, and then other times not so good news. I remember one time they wanted to transport him to Penn and put him on a machine and not know. Again, back then we didn't know what the response was. So mom's asking us, what should we do? And we don't even know. And I remember, we had Joy Ezekiel Gibson on our show earlier. I think it was maybe last season. I think we had her on, but same thing where she had COVID at the same time. So for me, I'm getting text about Tyrone and text about her, and these texts are literally, but exactly the same. So when the kidneys are shutting down, or just all the things that are happening, when her husband would text me and mom would text me, it was almost like a parallel experience that I'm having. So again, in my experience, it's another unique, because I'm having to deal with my brother, but my best friend is going through it as well, and I'm having to pray and believe God for both of them, and I'm seeing, what's happening in both of them, and then my best friend lives and my brother passes away. And it's like, again, you struggle with your faith, like, God,
right,
exactly. Was it any different, between how I was believing and praying for either one of them? So how did one live and you take the other one, and you find yourself questioning God? So talk to me about before that, Easter, talk about that, because I think that was a great example of the high, the Easter, right, the day right before he passed away.
So like you were saying, in the 2 weeks, you were getting texts, and it was like, it was extremely stressful, because they wouldn't come at a certain time. It'd be sporadic. You never know when you're going to get it. So you could be having a good day, and then you get the text, and all of a sudden everything just shuts down and you get in that mood. So it's just like, it was just an up and down roller coaster. It was just very emotional. And on Easter, Saturday. It was the Saturday before, because I think I was in choir rehearsal when I got the text. We got good news that, he was taking a turn for the good, and, things were turning around and everything was going great. And I remember that morning, because we were still taping, and I was at church singing, and I just remember shouting the victory. I was like, I heard God specifically say, all will be well. So I was just like already praising in advance that everything was, because we got the good news, and then the confirmation and service, all will be well. And then that night we got a bad news, and I remember
from nowhere, from
nowhere. Like, I'm saying, just literally. Like, because we had already gotten the good message that morning. So you only get one message a day about how he's doing. Yeah. So then when we got that next message, he was like, this doesn't even make sense. I remember I was taking my mom a plate, because it was Easter and everybody did their own thing because of COVID. And I saw the wear in her eye. And I promise you, I had no doubt. I had no doubt that God was going to bring him through. So I was like, Mom, don't even worry about it. Like, he's fine. Like, all is going to be well. And, went on home. And I was up, actually, when the text came through that he passed. And because it was in the middle of the night.
Well, it wasn't. It was that he wasn't doing well first, right? Because remember that night. Right. Forget what happened.
Yeah, she kept. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah, you're right. She had.
It was almost like an hour of updates until we finally got. And I remember, this can't be real. I just remember.
Right.
To the last moment, I never, ever, ever, ever would have believed that. I
felt like it came out of nowhere. I was just I was this complete shock. But
even when the messages were going bad, even when the news kept getting worse, I kept saying it's not going to end this way. Right.
It's just a bad thing, and it's going to turn back around.
We'll get the good news again, just like before. We'll get better news, and he'll come out of it.
Exactly. Right.
And just.
And in that text, it was just like, what do you mean?
It was shy. It wasn't real.
What do you even mean?
Yeah.
So I called Tony, because I'm like, this is maybe, I'm crazy. This is not, she didn't even know. She never saw it because she was asleep. So I actually told her that he passed away, which is another hard thing to do.
I never knew that. Wow.
Right. So she was like, what, of course she's in shock. Like, what are you talking about? And it's just yeah. It just didn't seem like it was real.
Yeah, we got the text. And so when we did, I just got everybody and Chris was living with us then, and she was asleep, so I let her sleep. But I, got everybody. We're in the living room, and we were literally on our knees praying. We were in a family room praying. And again, I'm getting texts, and I'm still praying. I'm getting texts, and I'm still praying. And then when that last text came through, I just remember saying, he's gone, and the girls falling out, and just that's those things that are kind of just experiences seared in your memory. But that's what I remember, and I just couldn't. Again, shock. I'm in shock, so I'm not. I'm just holding them, and we're trying to comfort them. Like, this cannot be real.
Right. Exactly. It just doesn't make sense. It's just, like, this cannot be happening. And I was saying, like, it, although I was, when I shared in the blog, like, our family's been blessed. I have made it through cancer, and God is he's blessed us just extremely, like, in everything, in health and in our finances and all that. And it's just like, although I had faith that he was going to bring him through, in the back of my mind, I still felt like maybe it's our chance. It's our turn to suffer and to feel some type of pain, And although I didn't want to feel the pain, I kind of knew it was coming, but I still didn't want to feel the pain, And it's just like, it's still saying, God, why? Like, why us, I'm
telling you, I never, shocked. I just did never. And I remember my mommy was on the show. She said the same thing. And maybe that's why you said you dropped the food off. You could see her eyes. She said she knew, somehow that she knew. But it just, for me, like I said, even to the point, that last text where before we got the news, and it just still was getting worse for us. Like, seemed like it was past the point of no return. It's, to me, in my mind, God can do anything. There's nothing too hard for God.
Exactly.
So I just did not accept that. And again, one of the things that I talked about in my story, I was saying, and I shared, Tyrone wasn't in church. We all grew up in a church, but he wasn't an active church goer. Just kind of
right.
But we believe in God. We know he's in heaven, and we know we'll see him one day. But that I had already written in my story all week. Well, he's walking with God. He's in a coma, but he's with God, and he's gonna come back, and he's gonna be changed. Like, I just had the whole story written out.
It's just like, what a testimony this is going to be. What a testimony! Like, because coming from him. Like, the kind of person he was, that kind of testimony that he would have, unbelievable. It'd be unbelievable.
Yeah, we had written it out that God's it's a chance, God. Here, we're setting you up. You here,
show yourself strong.
Right. Yep. This is perfect. And then it's like,
perfect opportunity. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
How could you not? And I remember sharing with you. I still believe this. I still believe that he was with God, and people have experiences when they come back from being sick or whatever, that they've seen God. But I believe that God gave him a choice. I do. I believe that God gave him a choice, and he chose to stay with him. I believe he chose to be with him. And so for me, when I think about that has been a personal comfort for me, knowing that every time I think about him with God. And I'm like, if you think about, heaven, and heaven being utopia, and there's no tears, there's no, like, he'll never, ever have another bad experience, ever. He'll never experience pain. He'll never experience fear. He'll never experience, like, all of those negative things that we as humans, experience. He'll never, ever experience that again. And so that's where I draw my relief from, saying, I miss him. I sure do miss him. But where he is and what he's experiencing, I would never, ever, ever take him from that.
Right.
And so that's kind of, me, people say, you're so strong, well, that's how I do it. Like, that's how I do it. It's just a matter of, I miss him. You see videos and you experience him. I experience, and I'll whatever the human emotion is, I'll go through it. And then I have to recenter myself. Like, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, he's good.
Like, he's better than he ever was. So.
Right.
Yeah, I see it. I saw the comment from Rose earlier. She said she lost her text from her nephew. I know it's again, you think in your mind all of those conversations, all of those things, because you do. I think when somebody passes and you see the text, you can relive those memories and those experiences through the text and through those conversations that you have. And I feel like sometimes even when you lose that conversation, it's another part of death. It's a connection that you lose, even from those texts. You lose that connection as well. It's something to grieve. So his birthday would have been today. He would have been 25. So Rose, we're praying for you, and just praying that you would feel some comfort and just in your grieving process as well. And I see Sterling, one of our friends from high school, is on. So thank you. Hugs back to you. I appreciate your support as well. And I see Love One of our previous guests who was on our show before. She's just sharing how traumatic it was. And I think many of us may have experienced that, the traumatic nature of not being able to be with a loved one, in a time of need. Even our guest last week, her brother passed away right after 9/11, but the same thing, like after 9/11, they weren't allowed in the hospital. So yeah, it's, again, these are, the fact that someone's sick is one thing, but these other contributing factors and contributing experiences make it difficult, even more so, to have to, to deal with something that's already tough. Okay. But I want to ask you about now in those early days of grief. And again, grieving in COVID is very different than the kind of grief that we've been used to. And like you said, we've experienced grief on a certain level. Our grandparents, our aunts, our uncle, we've had, deaths that we've experienced, but this kind of grief is very different.
Nothing like this.
It's very, very, very different. So talk about what that grief was like in those early days for you, and how you responded. What did you do in those early days?
So like I was saying in the blog, I don't ever feel like I really grieved his death. Like, when I found out, I told Tony, and I didn't tell my kids until the next day. And I didn't want them to see me in a vulnerable state. I wanted to stay strong for them, because with COVID going on and everything is scary, I'm sure they're just afraid, because I just lost my uncle and all that. So I just wanted to stay strong for them. But even more so, my mom, because she was dealing with, my father being sick. And, like I said, with COVID, like I was just extremely concerned for my mother. And of course, even his kids, dealing with losing your father, and the way that you couldn't talk to him, you couldn't hold his hand. The way he passed was just very traumatic. So I went into support mode, being on the other side of things. We were in the mortuary business. So as far as we're making arrangements and stuff, and when it comes down to our loved ones, no one's making arrangements for us. We still have to make the arrangements. We still have to do it. So I remember when we were sitting down at the table with my mom, Tony, and his kids, and I forget who started writing first, but they started writing and they couldn't do it, and they started crying. And then the next person did it and they couldn't do it. So I was like, all right, I had to do it. So I had to, write down the things and all this stuff, and even writing that, making sure, just to stay strong. I wanted to break down, but I just, for whatever reason, all right, we got to get these things done. You have to go to the cemetery, figure out where you want to bury him, do all these different things. So grieving just took a back seat for me, honestly. It never really got the opportunity to properly grieve him passing.
So when you did get to the point, and again, I feel like it's different there. Based on our experience, when somebody passes away, people come to your home. Right. People bring you food. People come and share memories. Like, one of those things, if there is a kind of a silver lining in death, it's the kind of the reunions and things that you get to have with people, and they share stories about that loved one, and it does help. I would say definitely just from memory, and those were all things that we did not experience with him.
Right, and I don't want to use the word, but I feel like he was robbed of that opportunity to people properly say goodbye. People couldn't come to the house. People couldn't, hug. It's because sometimes a hug goes such a long way, like just to get a hug, or even the sense of people just were leery about different things. So the support wasn't really there like you would want it to be when somebody passes away.
Like
so
it was right, like you need it to be. Because we're again still mourning in your own way, not having those relationships, not having those stories, just not having that time together. At least that first week leading up to the
right, because that helps. It helps ease the pain, because they're coming sharing their stories, and it's just you forget about how the hurt and the pain. Yeah.
And so with that, and especially even for us, again, we were delayed in even being able to bury him, and there were so many different things in the state of New Jersey, rules again for funeral, but then we had some other situations that took place that prolonged us being able to bury him. But I want to talk to you about even in that moment, you're being support for other people, but what kind of support were you experiencing? Again, we talk about it through maybe friends, family, church, job. Like, talked about like what kind of support you experienced, and maybe what you didn't get that you probably on this side feel like you needed and could have used during that time.
So at that point, I'm sure people wanted to support me, but I didn't want it. So I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like I didn't. So text messages were coming through, calls were coming. Like I didn't talk to anybody. Like I wasn't talking. Like I didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. I guess, talk about it makes it more real, but I didn't want to talk about it. And like, even though I just said a hug goes a long way, I didn't want anybody to touch me, and it wasn't because of COVID. I just didn't want to, I guess, feel those emotions at that moment. Because at that point, my best friend came to the house, and I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. Like, leave me alone. I'm good. So, yeah, there was support there, but I shunned it. I didn't welcome it.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of, you have certain support initially when it happens, but I often say about a month later and 2 months later and 6 months later, a lot of times people have gone on about their
Right.
way, their lives go back to normal. But when it's something that you're an interruption in your normal life, you can't get back to normal, whatever that is, as easy as someone else can. I remember, even the next day waking up, one of the things that I just always remember, I always say a split second. Every morning when I woke up, it was a split second, and then I remembered. So I literally had a split second of, I call it, people say Zen or peace, whatever it is. I had a split second of normalcy, and then it was like, my brother's gone. And that was so long, like so many weeks and months afterwards, just the first thing, just remembering my life has changed because he's not here anymore. And same thing, the phone was ringing, didn't want to talk. Yeah, it's a weird, I can't even explain it, just a weird, you're emotional, but you're physically, there's a physical, I think, experience that comes from that as well. And I see Nicole was saying her brother passed away in November 2010 at 32. Yeah, you miss him every day. It's somebody that you grew up with, somebody, whether you talk to them or not, it's somebody who's, as a sibling, they've been in your life for as long as you can remember. That's someone that you grew up with, and it's someone that you knew. So having, and I say it's a circle, it's a bond. Even for us, it's a sibling bond that's broken. Like our sibling
circle is broken.
Is broken. So there's definitely, you experience that as well. And again, all of these unique experiences that come from the feeling of grief as well. I want to ask you, so have you started grieving? If you did, when, and what does that look like for you now?
And I was, when I was talking to Sharon, even when I was writing the blog, I think this is the actual initial work for the grieving process.
Wow.
Because although some people have trying to get me to talk, I just didn't want to talk. And I didn't want to do this at all. Let me just say this now. I didn't want to do this. But some other people back,
So transparency. I did ask each of my sisters if, the topic was coming up, and I asked all of them, and our other two were not able to. So she did graciously step up and come back on the show. So thank you for that.
So, and it was because,
but it was good though. It was,
right. And it was necessary. I was like, it says God ordained, because it's something that, as much as I pushed it away, I had to deal with it and actually sit down. And this is like, I guess, the first process of grieving and getting to a good place with it. Like when I sat and wrote the blog, I had a rag, and because I just, it was hard. It was extremely hard to remember the things and to talk about it. So it's like, but it needed to come out. It needed to come out. So
with that, I know in your story you talked about, and I think this is probably part of the grieving process. You're not even aware of it, but the different emotions that come out. You talked about sadness and guilt and hurt, anger. So talk about each of those kind of maybe situations or how those come up and how you deal with them every time one of these or different emotions would come up.
Yeah, I think what majority happens is just profound sadness. It's just like I'm just so sad, and it takes me to a place where like I don't want to talk. Like I'm in a mood to just let me be. I don't want to talk about it. I don't just let me get to a point where I could be okay. So it's like
It's like
his
numbing,
pictures
almost
are
like numbing the pain,
yeah
right? Just
right.
whatever.
His pictures are all over my kitchen. I have a Google thing and it's a slideshow, and I promise every day a picture of him comes up every time I walk past it. It's just like, everything, like even listening to songs on the radio, like I could hear him singing some of the songs that he'd be singing, like Chrisette Michelle, one of the songs. And I'm just like, yo, Ty used to like bawl this out, like, so it's hard. Like I said, I felt all the things. I felt anger. Initially I was just like, God, why my brother? There were so many people that we knew, not so many people, but there were a lot of people we knew that went through this, that made it through.
Yeah.
Why didn't he?
Yeah.
So you question God, and you're angry. You're sad. It's just a bunch of emotions that I now had to sit and deal with at this point right now.
And you said, those triggers, those things. I know one of the things for us, we all used to love going to amusement parks.
Oh yeah.
And even again, I love kind of just going back in time in my mind. And I remember when we were younger, he and I would not ride roller coasters. So my mom probably remembers we would go to Hershey Park. Our whole family would go to Hershey Park every summer. Even Great Adventures back then, but we would sit and Dad would get so mad. Get on this, and it wasn't a roller coaster. It was just a ride that went up in the air, but we would be so terrified. It would just be me and him sitting on the bench crying. They were probably like 4, 5, 6, 7. But that was just a memory. We go back. I have a memory that he and I would sit on the bench crying because we did not want to get on anything that went in the air, anything looked scary. And it was traumatic for us. But then growing up, as we became teenagers, we would go to parks. I remember going down even to King's Dominion, just different parks. And we just wanted to go and ride roller coasters. Like he was that person. And
he was that person, right?
Yeah. And I remember the last time we rode a roller coaster, we went probably Father's Day, maybe Tara's birthday, birthday. One of those, I think it was her birthday. We all went down. Yeah. I think it was our last time going to Wildwood with him, and he and I got in the sea serpent. And we were
He's like, "You're done."
We were done.
Like, we're done.
We both
it's over. We used to ride for hours, and now it's like, no, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done.
And it was just, again, just kind of those kind of things, seeing the memory from being a child and growing and living and getting to that point. But it was just those kind of things, again, in spite of the pain, in spite of the missing of those memories are really truly what kind of still can bring you joy. Bring you joy in the midst of pain. And I know our father passed away in 2022. So I want to also talk about in terms of grieving. And as you said, you grieving our brother. Have you started grieving our dad? And what does the grief look like? How's it different between grieving our father and grieving our brother?
So I think it was different because I grieved Dad different because I grieved him before he passed. Because the person that was there was not our father. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I always said, I grieved my father continuously, watching him, so it's like when it happened, of course, I'm still sad and but it wasn't as traumatic as Tyrone, because we didn't expect that. This, we knew eventually it was coming to that moment. So it's just like, it was very, very different. Very different.
I see my friend, I think her comment might have come on already, but Nikisha from college, and she lost her dad very, very similar or recently to when we lost ours. But she said delayed grief is a thing. Yeah. And you have to deal with it. You never know when, that'll come, and you have to experience it as well. But as we talk, and we've had Paula Hollis on, I think I've been talking about her every single time we've had a guest on here, because she said something to me that was so profound that her family was using when her husband passed away, because she lost a spouse. Her children lost their father, but one of the ways they're getting through it is by space and grace. And when she explained it, I was just like, wow, I wish I knew that back then, because that would have been so helpful and healing. Because the space, again, we all grieve differently. And I know our family, we have very strong personalities and things like that. And a lot of times somebody could say something and someone take offense or trigger, and we kind of just, but if you think about offering that person grace,
Grace. Mm-hmm.
and then even given space, they need space. That's, let them deal with whatever they're dealing with. But to me, those were two profound things, especially in family relationships when everyone is grieving differently. Offering grace, even if someone says something that offends you, if someone does something that offends you, because I think death can bring out things in us
Yeah,
that maybe we didn't know were
exactly. That we
there.
didn't know was there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So understanding, again, you don't know what anyone else is going through as they're grieving, and being able to offer them that grace to be able to mourn and grieve in their own way, and not take offense to that. But then again, space, we don't always have to be together all the time. We don't have to do everything all the time. Sometimes people, like you said, you didn't want to talk about it. That was the space that you needed.
Mm-hmm.
As you were grieving, you needed that space just not to talk.
Right.
Sometimes space is just sitting next to somebody. They don't have to explain anything. Just
Just be
sitting next to
there.
them. I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Right.
think those were, I just wanted to bring those up. I think, like I said, I've been bringing them up every week, but I think space and grace, again, anybody who's grieving, and especially dealing with family members, it's so important to really practice that, and make sure we're offering grace, because we don't know what anyone, we just, there's no way we can
Yeah.
tell what anyone else is experiencing or how they're grieving, and not judging someone how they're grieving as well. That's
Right.
another thing I think we
That's
do.
another
We judge
thing.
someone,
Yeah.
they should be over it by now, or why are they acting like this, or there's so many
Listen,
judge.
I was that person because I remember seeing a person like their father had passed like 5 years ago, and they been saying, it hurts like yesterday, and always put. I'm like, dude, get over it. But now
This is
that you're in
before.
that
Yeah.
space, this is before. But now that you're in the space, it's like I felt bad for feeling that way. It's like,
Yeah.
because oh my goodness, like it hurts sometimes just as bad as the day I found out that he passed. Some days I cried like he just passed. Some days I'm better, but it's just like until you experience it, you can't say anything to anybody.
That's so, and that's true. Just again, on this side, making sure we're not judging, making sure, again,
Mhm.
we're offering grace, and we're praying for however someone needs to grieve, and however long, and however whatever way they need
Exactly.
to, because you have no idea their heart, you have no idea what they're feeling. I think that goes back to the question about support. It's like, how do we support our loved ones? And again, with Tyrone's passing, again, with us siblings and maybe our kids or whoever, everyone may be grieving differently. So even now, how can we support even in their own grief journey?
Mhm.
How can we continue, I think, to support during birthdays, during, anniversaries of his passing, during, again, when maybe even when the kids, Jasmine and Tiffany, get married, and not having their dad walking down the aisle, all those things that people are going to need support
Right.
after losing someone, and just making sure that we're able to support them and not be judgmental, and not,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
judge
Because
based
I
upon how
remember
we feel.
somebody told me, you got to deal with this now. Like you need to do this. You need to talk. This is like, initially when it happened, and it's just like I didn't want to deal with it right then, and maybe I wasn't in the space to be able to deal with it at that moment. But it's like people sometimes forcing you to grieve the way they want you to grieve. Like
Yeah.
everybody has their own space to do
On their
how they.
timeline.
Right.
Like on their
Exactly.
timeline in their own way to
Right.
grieve. So talk to me again, and we shared, but talk to me how did you resolve your feelings towards God after
Right.
his passing as well?
So, well, I didn't talk about this before, but even when when we initially found out he was in the hospital, on those days, um, instead of sitting in the house, because I'm a teacher, but I was a PE teacher, so we didn't have to do anything. So I wasn't really working. So I was really, my mind was just always all over the place, thinking about
Mhm.
everything with my brother. So at that moment, I called them prayer runs. And anybody knows me, I hate to run. I'm not a runner, but I would be running for 3 to 4 to 5 miles, and it was just an escape. And it was just that time with the Lord that I had. And throughout that every prayer run, it was just a reassurance that God assured me that everything is going to be okay. And even if the situation didn't work how I wanted it to work, He's still in control, and like that His way and His will is perfect. You may not understand it, but His way and His will is always perfect, and we just have to accept it. Like, of course, like I said, I was upset, but He had to remind me my way is perfect. I know things that He knows things that we doesn't know, like we don't know. Just like you said, you felt like God said to him, it's time to go. You want to stay, you want to go, and He made the decision that was best for him, because who would have known if he came out, which way things would have gone. We don't know. So maybe it was best for him to just go at that moment. Although we're being selfish and saying, I want you here because I'm selfish. I miss you. I miss our time. I miss my kids not being able to be around you, your kids, seeing your grandkids and your family. And, it's just, just although we don't understand it, it's just his will, and his way is just perfect.
Yeah. I wrote about again, in the story for the guidepost, one of the things that was, I think, so, impactful for me. I remember Cassidy she was sitting on the bed, and I came in to check on her. This is probably maybe a week after he passed away. And she said, why did God take Uncle Ty? And, and I kind of explained, after my brother-in-law passed away, something that the minister said to me that was so impactful to me was that, as we celebrate, and I think about it, as each of us have had children, as I've been pregnant, you and Tony and Terry, we all anticipated the birth. They're in labor, and we're sitting around waiting for this child, this baby, to come and join our family. And he was like, picture that in heaven, as when your loved one finally arrives in heaven, Jesus is waiting for him, and your family, everyone is waiting for him. He's finally arrived at his final, he's arrived in eternity. Your brother's there, and his family surrounding him. And I always thought about that, like, as much as we all celebrated as our new nieces and nephews are being born, or just, family members, that same celebration took place in heaven. And so as we were talking about that, we were watching Stranger Things if everybody watched that on Netflix. And in that, they had it upside down, which is basically an alternate reality that was negative to Earth, but it was the same thing, but just negative. So that later that day, she comes in, she's got a paper, and it has a line drawn around through the middle of it. And she has, on Earth, she has us at a grave site, literally a coffin at a grave site, and us, sitting in chairs, and we're all crying with a minister there. And then on the other side, which is like her upside down, it was heaven. The same coffin, kind of reflective there. He's coming out. And the thing that stood out to me, he had this huge smile on his face. And anybody knows my brother knows you're not going to find too many pictures of him smiling. Like, he rarely smiles. But the fact that she drew a smile on his face, and it was Jesus saying, welcome home, my son. And that was it for me. Like, just, again, trying to be tied up. Like, he's at his forever home, that he will never, ever cry another tear. He'll never experience anything negative again. And so that was, again, something that I just kept replaying in my mind, that just his smile, he is all day, every day experiencing joy. All day, every day experiencing peace. All day, every day experiencing, if you think about the greatest day you've ever had, the greatest day you've ever experienced, he's experiencing that continually, constantly, all the time, experiencing, like, he's having his greatest day and his greatest moment all the time. And so, again, with that, that's how I've processed, God, I trust you. It hurts. It wasn't my story. It wasn't the way I would have written it out, but I trust that you know well, and you've done what's best for him.
Yeah. So. Right. Yeah.
I think we made it, Tina. I think we made it. I think we got it. I think just ending, kind of with that, it's obviously not the way we would have written his story. It's not the way that we wanted things done. It's not the answer to our prayers. But a lot of times we must remember that we have to trust God to answer our prayers in his own way.
Right. That's the hard part, to accept that.
Yeah, because he just knows things that we don't. He's obviously greater. The song our dad said, always sing sovereign. We have to trust that he is sovereign, and that, he doesn't make mistakes. And then we just kind of, again, use that and be able to, we've gone through it, and he's healing us. He's bringing us through. And I still always say we've been very much advocating therapy on any level. So even grief therapy and grief coaching, we continue to advocate that, because that's what we're doing right now. We're talking and having a conversation, and just being able to talk things out instead of bottling things up, I think really helps someone with the grieving process. So if there's anyone there that is still struggling with grief, please, and you can reach out to us via our website. We have some counselors that have come on the show. We have grief coaches that have come on the show. We will definitely connect you with anyone that if you need help to talk to someone about grief and about your process, please reach out. We'll definitely provide professionals to help you. But again, just being able to share our story, God brought us through something, and now we're using what we've gone through to be able to help someone else.
Right.
And just give him the glory
Throughout
it.
Yep.
Thank you, darling.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. And I've been seeing comments, y'all. I can't keep up with the comments. I'm so sorry. I was trying to get, all Tina's questions in and being engaged with her. But we are going to go back and look at all the comments. We will not leave our online studio until we read all the comments. But, I'm seeing even on the screen, Cynthia, it doesn't matter how long your brother's passed away. I'm seeing different, even our guest last week, 24 years. It's just something about, that brother relationship. But one of the things that we talked about last week is making sure their legacy lives on, making sure the essence of who they were, we don't forget about them. We continue sharing their stories with our kids and with, our relatives. We continue to keep their memory alive, because when their memory's alive, then they are still alive, with us. They're physically not here, but when their memory's here, they're still with us. So again, thank you. His daughter Jasmine's on. She said she got through it without crying. Thank you for joining us, Jasmine. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for. And I've seen so many old faces here. Ashley is here from Maryland. Y'all, thank you so much for your support. Every time I see a comment, I see Zoe on. Yes, my brother's girlfriend is on here as well. I say is, I don't say was, but his girlfriend is on. So thank you all. I know we all, again, people that we all went through the grieving process. I see cousins on and family friends and friends from our church. We all grieved. Tammy was his buddy at Sixers game. She always saw him at the Sixers game. We always stopped to see her and talk to her. But we each, and that's so wonderful that everyone's jumping on and sharing their memories. And that's what we do. And that's how we help other people too. Just being able to share memories of how our loved ones and their loved ones, how they impacted us. So y'all can keep putting comments in there. We're going to go back and read them, but just keep sharing about him and keep, I'm sure my mom will read them to my mom as well, so she can see them. But thank you so much for joining. We're going to close out our series next week. Pastor Stacy Williams is going to join us and talk about the loss of her brother. And even as a minister and as a pastor, her ministering to another family during a funeral and finding out her own brother passed away. She just has such a powerful story, and she's going to close us out. So please, we invite you next week to come back and join us with Pastor Stacy Williams as we close out our series with loss of a brother. We're going to continue to pray for all those that are grieving. Again, reach out to us if you need support, counseling, or grief coaching. We love you. We thank you, and we will see you next week. God bless.